Hello viewers, and welcome to the Musings of Mavry channel. I'm your host Mavry, where today I'm going to be doing a little bit different content than what my channel usually does, which is more anime related, and I am going to talk about my experiences on attending the No Girl No Cry Dome concert, co-hosted by Poppin Party and Silent Siren. So, I guess I give a little bit background about this entire thing first. So, first of all, I am a Poppin Party fan, and I mean an actual fan, as in I buy their merchandise, and I spend a lot of my time researching topics related to them, or trying to, push them, push their popularity up with different content. But I will be giving my dues to Silent Siren as well, because I actually am a fan of the Japanese girl band scene in general, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. So anyways, the background for this concert really came from Poppin Party's repeat concert at Budokan sometime this year, 2019, in February, where they announced, that they are going to be hosting this dome concert along with Silent Siren. Right now, it's big news, right? And it's mega news for me. First of all, it's a dome concert, and domes are basically the biggest capacity venues that you can get in Japan. Well, technically, there are still bigger venues, such as Nissan Stadium or the National Olympic Stadium. But to keep things simple, we'll just consider domes to be the biggest venues, right? So it's definitely tens of thousands of people attending for each concert. But I guess for most people, that was the biggest news to them. But for me, even bigger, well, I guess you can't say really bigger, but of equal impact was the fact that Poppin Party were going to be collaborating in this concert with Silent Siren, which is, to me, personally, I've always held them as the second most successful girl band in Japan. So, like I said, I am a big fan of the Japanese girl band scene. I seriously consider them that scene to be the best in the world. I listen to everything from the, I guess, most popular, the mainstream bands such as Scandal, such as Silent Siren, the bands that are more popular to Japanese natives, such as Akai Koen or Negoto, Gacharic Spin, those kinds. In the West, a lot of the Japanese girl bands that are popular are stuff such as Bandmaid, Aldius, Love Bites, these more metal-oriented girl bands. And I even listen to a lot of, I guess, more maybe underground, but at least less popular bands, such as Rurigirori, such as Girlfriend, such as Mutant Monster. I love girl bands, okay? So I understood the impact of collaborating with Silent Siren. First of all, they're a mainstream band, and like I said, I do consider them the second most successful band overall, the second most successful girl band, at least for this current generation of girl bands, right after Scandal. So that was huge news to me, right? And I did like the direction that the Bandori franchise, which Poppin Party is part of, is going, and the fact that they chose to do this kind of collaboration. So I said, what the heck, let me just support it in person, right? And so I entered the drawing for the tickets, I got the premium seats, paid for the premium seats, and attended both days of the concert last week, flying all the way to Japan just to attend this. So, was it worth it? Well, at least for me it was, and like I said, I do want to try and expand both Poppin Party and Silent Siren, as well as Japanese girl bands to the world, so I'm deciding to share my experience here. And especially if you guys are fans of Bandori or fans of Poppin Party, I also do a lot of the Bandori related well, I guess not a lot, but I have done quite a bit of Bandori content as well in regards to anime, as well as the I attended the 7th Live as well. So if you guys are interested, you can also find my content over there. So, beyond that, I'm planning to release maybe 5 videos related with this concert. First of all, day 1, the live report from day 1, a live report from day 2, and some various vlog stuff, which is maybe more Bandori related, with a 2-parter. And then also, finally, I will also be doing an introductory video of the goods that I got. Again, that one will be more Bandori Poppin Party focused. So, if you guys are Silent Siren fans, maybe just watch the live reports for the two days. So, just in case there are Silent Siren fans here, or maybe people who are not as familiar with the real-life aspect of Bang Dream of Bandori, I decided to give a quick introduction of both the bands. So let's start off with Poppin Party. So Poppin Party, shortened term is PoPiPa, and in order to understand them, you first have to understand about the entire Bang Dream or Bandori franchise. So the Bang Dream franchise is basically this project which sort of links fictional characters with real-life characters at the same time. So the whole concept of this is that even though it's a fictional story with fictional characters, from the very beginning, it's supposed to be linked with a real-life representative, and they are supposed to be interlaced with each other, the events that happen both in real life and in fiction. So this project started out in 2015 with the first character being Aimi, the guitar vocalist of Poppin Party. So she started the band, and also at the same time she the first I guess official media of Bang Dream was a manga that started serialization. And so, they basically used the entirety of 2015 to find all the different characters and find all the different band members, and eventually they gathered them by the end of 2015. In 2016, they made their major debut. In 2017, they had their Budokan concert, and in 2019, they had their second Budokan concert, and, well, now here we are, right, with the No Girl, No Cry Dome concert. Beyond actually the real life band as well as manga, it also has lots of other media as well. It has card games, it has anime, it has mobile game, and probably most fans of the Bandori franchise is coming from the mobile game. It has the biggest population, if you will, out of all these various media, but there are supporters for each of the other respective media as well as people who generally just support the real life Poppin Party members. Now, because this is actually a media franchise, Poppin Party, the five people who comprise Poppin Party, they are actually voice actors by profession. Well, for a few of them, it's a little bit more ambiguous, but simplistically speaking, view them as voice actors, right? So, beyond doing this Bang Dream, beyond doing Poppin Party, they're not actually full-time band members. They have lots of other work with lots of different franchises, with different animes and games as well. But then again, Silent Siren fans can probably draw a parallel to this, since SaiSai members, they start out as something different as well, right? And them becoming really more focused on band activities, there was a transitional period, right? As I'm sure most SaiSai fans would know a lot of. So, something that to take into consideration when you're listening to Poppin Party, you might think, hey, why is the vocal singing voice so high? Well, that's because she's singing in what is called a character voice, right? Because she voices a character that has a certain voice, both within the anime, within the game and whatnot, within different media, so she has to take on that character and use that character's voice as the sound of this band. So that is something that a lot of people get confused of. Like, why is her speaking voice in one voice but her singing voice is so high pitched? So that's the reason. Their sound is more on the poppy side, I guess you could say. It's more pop oriented, although you can find lots of different genres there as well. You can find more traditional style ones, you can find ones that are more rock oriented, and there's even SaiSai themes music as well. But they are, you can get different attributes that you want from Poppin Party. So, I guess, in the end, that's all you need to know, for now, at least, of PoPiPa. So, next up on the list is the band Silent Siren, or more affectionately known by fans as SaiSai. So they are also an interesting bunch. They made their debut in 2010, so they're moving on to 10 years now for this year. And the most interesting thing about them is that they are comprised of people who were all former reader models of fashion magazines. So let me explain this term a little bit for people who don't know. So in Japan, fashion magazines are a huge business, right? They have lots of different fashion magazines for different demographics. There's one for middle school girls, there's one for high school girls, there's one for college girls and older, and for working girls. anyways, it's a huge market. And they also have something called reader models, which is you're a reader of this model, but you send in a lot of your pictures and stuff, showing, you know, how to wear various outfits and whatnot, and so sort of like a temporary model of this magazine, if you will. Now, some of them do eventually transition into being dedicated models for a particular fashion magazine, but reader models are quite popular. I guess you couldn't really say it's a profession, but it's just a thing, right? It's a Japanese thing. So being reader models basically means that a lot of different people, or the editorial department of the magazine, they appreciate your looks, they appreciate the outfits that you put out, they appreciate your insight, right? So all 4 of the members of Silent Siren were all former reader models, and so you can kind of see it there within their looks, right, and how they normally dress. They are definitely very beautiful, and they dress very stylishly as well. But in any case, this, I'm not entirely sure about the history, but from what I've read before, it was apparently sort of like just a, just a side project, a side thing, or, just for fun. They formed this band just for fun. But in any case, whatever the origin story is, they eventually made their debut in 2010, and, gradually got more and more popular, right? I'd say probably their biggest peak in popularity is somewhere around 2015, 2016. They had that period where, like, they were, I guess, arguably the most popular girl band in Japan at that time. They're very popular with high school girls, considering, how they got up in the first place, right? So a lot of high school girls would admire their looks and whatnot, and then they can be badass at playing in a band at the same time. So there's this whole dynamic to them. Now, for people of the Bandori franchise, I guess the easiest way for you guys to look at it is to consider them as a real-life extension of Pastel Palettes, right? So Pastel Palettes is this idol band, right? And indeed, for a lot of the ways that Silent Siren markets themselves, and for a lot of the activities they do, you can also consider them sort of like idols / models, right? They still do handshake events, they still do photo shoot events with fans, they do modeling. They pose for a lot, and they also do these various other, shows that showcase their talents in these respective areas, right? So they're definitely not a full-fledged band, like they don't write their own songs or whatnot. So they, in this kind of case, are sort of parallel to Poppin Party, because they're both, I guess, arguably you could say they're both people who are not concentrating on their main profession, if you will, and then instead doing something else. But I think that's why this whole dynamic is so interesting between them. So that is a brief introduction of Silent Siren. So let's just move on to the concert, right? Day 1, the opening guest act was from Roselia. Actually, I got a little bit late into my seats. I actually had arena seats, so the premium seats from the concert for this day, which you basically sit infield, if you could call it that. So if you consider a baseball field, right, there's the infield where the players are normally playing, and then there's the stands and whatnot where the audience normally sits. So in this case, for the concert, the infield was turned into premium seats for people, while the regular seats were, again, the outside circle, the regular seats. So I got premium seats, I got arena seats for the first day, but I actually got in a little bit late, like, not so late that I actually didn't see them coming in, but I was actually standing off to a side, eating, and then I later realized once I got down that I actually entered from the entire wrong area, so my seat was on the other end of the field, so I had to take some time to, go around and get to the other side. So I arrived at my seat just as Roselia were starting to play the first song, Louder, right? So apologies to those that sat beside me. And for Silent Siren fans, or for people who are who are not as familiar with the Bandori franchise, Roselia is the second band that has real life voice actors also play the part of a band. So similar to Poppin Party, Roselia is the second band that does this. So first song is Louder, right? And that's a great banger. It's one of my favorite songs from the, I guess, older repertoire of Roselia, so it's always nice to listen to this. And I think I've mentioned this before, but Louder to me is also a very fun song to play because it's relatively easy, both on the guitar and the bass. So, and it's a banger as well. So like I said, I absolutely love this song. Right from the get-go, you can kind of tell that the acoustics of this place were not very good. If I were to use one word to describe it, it would be muddy. The sound is muddy, like muffled in a way. Now, thankfully for Louder, this doesn't really pertain that much. It's a pretty noisy song in and of itself, so it was generally okay for this one. The next one, however, was R. Now, this one is, again, a favorite song of mine, and this one actually is a bit more challenging than Louder, especially in regards to the second verse and onwards, where there's a lot of timing things, and the sound is not sort of like this wall of sound that Louder is, right? So you can pick out the individual notes a lot more easier in R. But again, it's a very fun song, right? It's a song that people can shout along to. I was shouting along as well at all the various different parts. Now, however, there were two things that I noticed for this song. Number one was the mic, right? So Megashi's mic, the drummer, she also has some vocal parts as well, and when it came time for her to sing, the mic was closed. So that was kind of a bummer, and I think they didn't actually fix it within this song. They fixed it in the later songs. So come on. That's like the first strike against the sound crew for this particular day. But thankfully, there's nothing you can do, right? So most people just kind of laughed it off. The second thing that I really noticed is Kudoharu's, the guitarist, playing, especially during the solo parts. Now, I haven't actually watched R live yet, so I haven't seen the performance of this, but I was quite impressed by Kudoharu's playing in regards to guitar parts for this song. So, good on her. The third song is Brave Jewel. To be honest, I don't really remember much from this. Let me see. I think if I were to say anything, I'd say I was probably headbanging the entire time for this song. Not really much else to say. I do believe that after this song, they had a sort of very brief talk MC, especially from Yukina, but because this time they only had 4 songs in total, they didn't really go out of character and do some fun stuff in regards to their own characters, right? So it's basically just okay, please support the bands, please have a fun time, that kind of PR stuff. So after that, they immediately went into the next song, Nesshoku Starmine. This one is another song where you can shout the lyrics along as well, and also thankfully the mic of all the members were working this time, so no problems there. And I actually kind of prefer the vocals in this live version to the CD version. It has a more authentic, a more natural feel to it, so that was nice to hear as well. It's their opening act was really short, right? So I'd say overall they did a great job of firing people up and getting people, getting people's tension high in anticipation of the actual main event. And I guess that's the most I could say of Roselia. They did their job and they did it flawlessly. So good on them. And so after the opening act, after Roselia left the stage, we get into the main part, right? So on the first day, Poppin Party went up first. It is kind of a versus live themed thing, but in any case, for the first day, Poppin Party were first up to bat, if you will. So the first song, I believe the way that they made their way onto the stage was that they already set up on the stage and then it sort of opened up. My memory is a little bit fuzzy on this. It's been a week, so bear with me if I actually remember this wrong, but I do think that it was a case of them playing the music and then opening the doors, and then we can see all 5 of them already on the stage playing. At least I believe that was what it was. Anyways, the first song, right, KIZUNA Music, the opening of the 2nd season. Now, I was actually quite surprised that they would open up with KIZUNA Music. it seemed a weird song to open up to, let's put it that way. But I guess, to be fair, it is very popular with fans, right? Especially considering the anime as well. And so right off the bat, first of all, Aimi sounded spectacular. She sounded great. There was no cracks or weaknesses in her voice. She sounded very firm, very powerful throughout. However, the mics of the rest of the members were kind of on the low side, because within KIZUNA music, or actually within a lot of Poppin Party songs, they have parts where the other members sing along, or they have some of their own phrases as well, right? So for the most part, I feel like, especially within KIZUNA music, the other members' mics were it was way too low, let me put it that way, so I could barely hear them. So that's, again, under strike against the sound team. As for the song itself, you know, there's something special about this song, especially after the conclusion of Season 2. I mean, hearing it live, it invokes some special feelings. I don't know how to really describe it. The closest word I can think of right now at this moment is maybe the word sacred, although it seems kind of weird, but it's just, you know, when you hear KIZUNA music being sung by Poppin Party, you just think, all is well with this world, right? And I don't know, I feel like this should be a song, you know, right before the start of a break segment or something, but again, and the reason I say this is not only because of the specific feeling I have about this song, but also the fact that it's not really a song that has a lot of audience participation, right? So it's more of a just sit there and listen to us sing kind of song. So that's why I felt it was kind of weird to start out with this. But anyways, that's what they did. And also, while they were playing, like I mentioned before, right, I was sitting in the arena seats, so I was sitting more closer to the stage, if you will. But actually, one thing that was very interesting to me during that time when they were singing KIZUNA music was there was a lot of staff hurrying about and moving around fences and whatnot, and generally being busy with something, right? So actually, I was kind of distracted by them, and I wondered what the heck they were doing. So then it caught the attention of my eye that there was actually this big track right alongside the place, the section that I was sitting at. That was basically black tracks. It kind of looked like a railway track, right? So immediately I started thinking, hey, are they actually going to be doing a rolling stage to the middle of the field? And lo and behold, that is what actually happened. So after KIZUNA music, with the next song, B.O.F, or B.O.F, if you will, they showed off their moving platform. So the stage that they're actually on, it can go up and down, sort of like an elevator, and then it can also roll out and move forward. So what they did was they elevated the stage so that they were playing, you know, above in an elevated position, and then they simply so it's basically like this giant crawler that crawled out over the heads of actually the people who were sitting in the middle. Which I'll also talk a little about later on as well. So again, B.O.F. Now this is a song that's really that really gets the crowd going, high tension and whatnot. So you know, so again, the crowd was going crazy over this song, which, like I said, it fits much more of an opening, I would say, to a concert than KIZUNA music would. But anyways, so while they were playing, they also started rolling out on the stage. So the stage could roll out to two different positions. One, or actually three if you consider it in total. One is the original position at the very front, one is the middle position, which is actually literally right next to where I was sitting, and then the outfield position, which extended all the way to the far side. If you consider the second base of a baseball field, it went all the way up to the stands. Right, so these three different positions. So when they were playing B.O.F, they started rolling out to the middle part and whatnot. They stayed there for a little bit, and then they also rolled to the back. They went forward to the back. Apparently, there was some issues with SAI's vocals in this song, but if I'm being completely honest, I didn't actually pay attention to it that much, because once the girls started rolling out, like I said, they were literally right next to me, so I was basically busy waving at them and whatnot to actually notice much about what they were doing. So I didn't really pay any attention to any vocal problems that there were, or if there were, I chose to ignore it because, hey, right? Oh, although one thing I did notice, because they they rolled out right next to me and then further away is the sound delay, right? So consider that all 5 of them are up there playing, right? So in terms of, guitars and bass and whatnot, those will automatically be connected to the speakers, right, to the entire sound control system. So you can't really hear much of them just by themselves. You would hear them through the speakers. The drums, however, you can absolutely hear Hoshi, banging on the drums, right? And you can really get a sense of the delay because since she was right next to, their stage was right next to me, I could hear the actual raw drum sounds playing, but at the same time, I could also hear the drum sounds coming out of the speakers. And I gotta say, the delay was like at least 0.5 to 1 second, right? It was a huge delay there, and it actually threw me off when she passed by because I was hearing more the raw drum sounds that she was producing, but then later on I would hear, because you hear that, it would be sort of out of sync with the music that you're hearing because that is a delayed sound, right? Now, it's quite jarring, but I guess there's not really much you can do about it. It's bound to happen at venues of this size. But I'm just saying, it brought me out of the experience a little bit. So after B.O.F, they got to the far side, and they had like a quick talk segment, basically saying hi to the people at the far ends of the stands, and then they got into these carts or floats, if you will. So 2 to a side, 3 to another side, and then they basically... So, if you consider like my head to be the main stage, so they went all the way down here, and then they divided, and then they went on different carts to circle back to the stage, right? And during that time, they played Happy Happy Party. Okay, so with the way they did things, let me say it like this: if you are going to be watching this later on within a Blu-ray version where they do all the editing, the video editing and whatnot, I'm sure that the actual effect is probably very nice to look at. Now, however, as someone who was in person there, I didn't really like this concept of them on different carts and then going in different directions, right? Because first of all, the live camera work was not that great. If I'm being entirely honest, and me being in the actual arena seats, I actually literally could not see them moving in the 2 directions because of just the line of sight problems, right? So that was kind of a bummer, to be honest, and it made for a less than ideal experience, I would say. I could only watch the screen, but then the actual camera work wasn't really that good as well, so And not to mention the entire concept of them being on carts, and now I get why they do this, right? It's a big venue and they want to kind of allow them to have interactions with the far side audience as well. But at the same time, I feel like this kind of maybe works more with idol groups, but maybe not so much with bands. It just gave off a very funky feeling experience, if you will. Like they're a band, right? So they still have to play their instruments while they are rolling around on these carts, and is this experience really worth it to see them for a few seconds on these carts going by? I don't know. I guess they want to do something different, but I'm just saying that from an in-person perspective, it wasn't really that fun to watch. So after that, they went back to the main stage because they circled back, right, on the 2 different carts, and so they walked all the way back to the main stage as well, playing around on the way as well. And they had to play around because otherwise the walk from the carts back to the actual middle of the stage was quite long. So in this, I guess for this performance, they seemed a lot more free, if you will. So they didn't really seem nervous or whatnot, and their interactions, the way they played around, seemed very natural. I feel like they didn't have as much pressure, actually, this time than they did before. So before, even for the previous 2 Budokan concerts, I feel like they felt a lot of pressure on them. But this time, it felt like they were having a fun time themselves as well. Very high energy, very energetic, and basically just fooling around, the PoPiPa that we all love. So yeah, and they also gave a slight MC after that, a talk segment after that once they got back to the stage, mostly talking about their new uniforms, their park ranger uniforms, as a lot of people like to call it, and as well as the fact that they are all wearing shorts or pants this time as well. And part of the reason for this is probably because they were on this sort of moving stage, right? So the ground of that stage, or the floor tiles of that stage, is actually transparent. So when they go over the heads of the fans beneath them, the fans below can actually look up and see directly through the stage. So that's probably the reason why they chose to go with a short or pants uniform for this time. Alright, so next up after they finished their MC segment is the debut of their new song, Dreamers Go, right? Now this one didn't really come as a surprise, they already announced it beforehand on their Twitter that they were going to be playing this song, so, you know, it is what it is, right? Now this song, when it actually debuted in the anime, I didn't really think much of it, I just thought it was a pretty decent song that had some fun guitars, and I also quite liked the vocals of Aimi as well in it. But I didn't really think too much of it. Now, however, once the full version dropped, I gotta say, my perception of it changed a lot. I think it really grew on me, actually, and I do really like this song now as well. So, as I said before, I already liked the guitars from it, and then later on, I found that the drum parts to it is also quite interesting as well. The whole arrangement of this song is quite interesting. So, it's nice to be able to hear it. And Poppin Party did a pretty solid job with the debut of this song. Not really much that I can say was wrong about it, if at all. So, I don't know what else to say. Great job, right? They followed this up with Teardrops, right? The legendary Teardrops. And I feel like this was a pretty smart choice. Dreamers Go being a new song, it's pretty hard to get crowd interaction with that kind of song. You can't really cheer much for a new song, right? Because you don't know what to cheer. But immediately after that, following it up with Teardrops, as we all know, Teardrops it's basically a guarantee crowd mood setter, right? Once it comes out, everybody goes crazy, goes into a frenzy and whatnot. It's one of their most popular live performance songs. And I guess really, I can't really say much else about Teardrops, right? They've performed it so many times, I don't think really much else has to be said. Aimi is Aimi, as always within this song. So, yeah, not much to say. Oh, but personally, I really like, at least from my personal experience, I did enjoy being able to finally participate in the changing of the penlight colors for this song. So there's this part in it where your penlight is supposed to be red, right? But there's a part where you change it to blue, and then a part in the song where you change it back to red again. So it was fun to be finally able to follow along with this part in person with penlight in hand. Now, unfortunately, because I was in an arena seat, I couldn't really see the entire stadium change along, but that's for day 2. So anyways, that's more of a personal thing for me for Teardrops. And then they followed up with Hachigatsu no If. Now, this song is a Hoshi and Aimi duet. So, again, the entire reason why they played this song for this concert is probably because Silent Siren has their own song, Hachigatsu no Yoru, right? So they are very similar. They both mean August something of August. So that's probably why they decided to play it. And they actually played this song with the stage in the middle position, right? In the middle of the field. And because of that, I'll have to say, sorry, but I didn't really pay much attention to the song or to any issues that they were actually having, Hoshi and Aimi. I was paying attention to Rimi, who happens to be on my side of the stage. Like I said before, because I had arena seats that were right next to tracks, when they stopped in the middle, Remy was literally like 3 meters, 5 meters in front of me, right? So that entire time, I was basically waving to her and trying to, get her attention and whatnot. I do believe our eyes met, but don't quote me on that. Maybe, maybe not. But anyways, and the whole time, I was also thinking to myself, wow, Remy is small. She is so tiny and adorable, right? Like, I already knew that she was quite short. All of the Poppin Party members are quite short. I believe she's maybe around 155 centimeters, something like that. But even more than that, what really stood out to me was her shoulder width. Like, it's small. It's so small. And you contrast that with the huge bass that she's playing, and it just makes for a very funny and very adorable dynamic there. And also you have to pair that with the fact that Remy always goes into her cool rocker mode when she's playing the bass at live events, right? So I don't know, that entire time I was focusing my attention on Remy. So sorry Hoshi, sorry Aimi, but my attention was elsewhere during that time. So then, after Hachigatsu no If, they followed up with Kirakira. Alright, Sing Girls, right? Every time I encounter this song, I just want to say Sing Girls. Now, this song is actually another big favorite of mine. Oh, and by the way, PoPiPa actually went to the far side of the field, and they got into the carts again to sort of like circle the stadium. I've already mentioned my thoughts on those carts and whatnot, so I'm not going to repeat it again. But at least, again, this song is a big favorite of mine. And really, I feel like this song, together with KIZUNA music, sort of defines PoPiPa to me. Not very, maybe not particularly their sound, but just the overall feeling and the overall lyrics of both Sing Girls and KIZUNA music. They sort of, to me, those songs just scream Poppin Party, right? I don't know if I can really get my point across. I don't really know a good way to describe it, but that's the best I can do, right? So these songs to me are equal to Poppin Party, is what I mean. And it's really, you know, Sing Girls is also a extremely fun song to do call and responses along to. Whether the Sing Girls or the 4, 3, 2, 1, Ready Go, you know, those parts, it's just a fun song, and I also like when we can wave along with the song as well. I actually really like their sort of step choreography that they normally do with Sing Girls as well, but again, in this, for this particular concert, because they were on the carts, on the floats, and doing some interaction, playing around with each other, and then also interacting with the crowd, they didn't really do that step choreography, which I like very much. But it is what it is, I guess. So then after they finished Sing Girls, they went back, you know, their carts also went back to the stage, right? So again, they fooled around, played around a little bit, and then walked all the way back to the main stage as well, where they continued with another talk segment. Now this time they were mainly talking about, you know, the purposes of this No Girl No Cry concert, the entire concept of having this sort of battle of the bands with Silent Siren, and as well as what Silent Siren meant to them and their relationship with the various members of SaiSai, right? And so, you know, it's I don't think there's really much to say about this, but by all means, it seems that they, well, first and foremost, Poppin Party are fans of Silent Siren, right? Because they're big senpais in terms of girl bands within Japan. Like I said, they've been established for around 10 years now, so they are one of the oldest girl bands of this current generation. And you know, they are people that Poppin Party have looked up to as well, and so to a lot of them, it's basically a chance to play with their idols, if you will, or their stars, if you will. So, you know, that's the entire dynamic that's going on between them. And fittingly, right after this talk segment, they play No Girl No Cry, right? The theme of this concert, and also the sort of like the manifestation of the relationship between these two bands. Now, No Girl No Cry, I actually, it's also a song that really grew on me as well. When I initially listened to it, I didn't really think much about it. Over this past few months, I actually consider it one of my most played songs for these past few months by Poppin Party. I really enjoyed it. So especially the solo parts where they have the solo instrumentals. Like seriously, all the girls are badass during that part. So it's just overall a great song, right? And the lyrics to it aren't very nice as well. Now, what surprised me about this song actually is the cheers that came from it and how uniform it was. Because by all means, for some of these songs, of Poppin Party for the previous songs, sometimes I got the feeling that the crowd didn't really know the correct call and response to some of the parts. I'm not sure, but maybe there's quite a few first-timers that came to a live event. But in any case, that was, you know, it wasn't as uniform, right? And this one, No Girl No Cry being a new song, I wasn't really expecting much cheers or chants to come out for him or from it as well. And so it was to my surprise when the cheers or the call and responses from this one was perhaps even louder than some of their previous songs. So that was quite another fun thing to watch as well. Oh, to be fair, it's quite easy. You simply repeat "No Girl, No Cry" alongside Aimi when she sings it. So, but like I said, it's the entire perception and the entire the atmosphere of it. So it turned into a very fun song in the end as well. Not that it was like it's a great song by itself to listen to, but it's also a fun participation song as well. So after that, they immediately kept the tension through with Time Lapse, right? So this one is another another fan favorite, and considering that this is, you know, this kind of venue, this kind of large-scale event, and also that you want to showcase yourself to potentially other fans as well, Silent Siren fans, it makes sense that they would put this in their repertoire, in their set list as well, right? And, well, like, what else did I say? Time Lapse is awesome as a crowd, not just as a song itself, but also as a crowd participation song. Like, when it came out, pretty much everyone was going like, whoa, whoa. Like, I mentioned in my live viewing report how the entire movie theater whoa-ed along. And being there in person at the venue, you know, that is a whole different experience, right? When you're hearing tens of thousands of people whoaing along with you. It was definitely deafeningly loud. But again, it was so much fun to sing this one along as well. And that's really all I can say about this song. It's an awesome song, it's a cool song, and it's a fun song. So the last song that they played on their set list was, actually they went back to one of their classics, Starbeat. Starbeat, you know, it's a classic staple already, and probably one of the most iconic songs of season 1 of the anime. What really kind of surprised me from this song is how rock and energetic it actually is in person, in live. Because you sort of feel like, especially the beginning of Starbeat, right? You know, you always have this kind of perception that it's more of a softer song, and especially with all the la 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 parts as well. But hearing it in person, you really get the feeling how high energy it actually is. Which, you know, to be fair, is something that we already knew. The BPM for this song is actually really high. But yeah, so that was the part that, again, it's a great song to act as a ender as well. And it being the ending song, again, the crowd got fired up, and they basically shouted out Starbeat when it was the time to do so. Alright, so there's the part where all the members would go like, Starbeat, and then people are supposed to shout Starbeat along with them. So again, that part was loud. So yeah, and also during this part, I guess they wanted to the production for this wanted to have some fun, so they actually had a segment where these huge balloons were released into the crowd, and that you can bounce along, right? So there's these huge balloons that are probably the size of, I don't know, maybe they're like 3 people high, in 3 people in radius, something like. Anyways, they're huge balls, right? And they bounce it around within the infilled arena seats. So I get that they're trying to be, they're trying to get some, you know, it's supposed to be fun, and indeed in any other situation I would think it's pretty fun. However, at that time I was trying to concentrate on the song, both in the call response parts as well as cheering them on since it is the last song. So it got kind of annoying when every few seconds a balloon would come over here and then it would basically bounce into you and you'd have to bounce it back, right? So it was kind of a troll move on the stats part, let's be honest here. At least that's what my feeling was anyways. So, and then by the end, you could pop the balloons, and then lots of small balloons would come out of that one big balloon. And I actually have one of them as well, if I can find it. Where is it? No, there we go. So yeah, I managed to get my hands on one, so apparently these people would actually rush to get these, and then you'd have to try and deflate them yourselves without actually piercing the balloon. And apparently you can sell these for money. I actually didn't want to get one of these. At the very end, before I was leaving, one balloon happened to bounce near me, so I just picked it up and decided to keep it as a souvenir, right? But, you know, it's my first time attending these kinds of things. I had no idea that these things were valuable as well. So, anyways, that was that. And that was the end of the PoPiPa performances, and so, you know, that's that. And, well, yeah. That's their portion. So then let's get into the Silent Siren portion. So then we get into the Silent Siren portions, right? So again, I do know about Silent Siren. I've heard some of their songs before prior to this live, but I'm mostly a Poppin Party fan, so I'm not gonna talk too much about each of the Silent Siren songs and whatnot, but I'll do my best as well. So first off, they started out with Fujiyama Disco. This is one of the original songs that I already knew of, and it's also one of their most popular songs as well as the song that they decided to cross-promote with Bang Dream as well. So it made sense for them to start with this song. Probably a lot of people would have heard this as well, and generally it's just a fun song, right? Fujiyama Disco, I love the bass part in this song, and also there's this one part in the middle where Sue goes, the vocalist for Silent Siren, goes ch, you know, sort of like clicking her tongue and whatnot, and that part is great as well. And indeed, when they performed this song, during that part, the crowd cheered along as well. So, since this is the first song that Silent Siren play, again, I was focusing a little bit on how they actually sounded, right? Now, right off the bat, you could hear that they sounded louder. So, I'm not quite sure if they simply decided to turn up the master volume, or something that I'm actually more leaning towards is that they just have a slightly different sound mix to Poppin Party, where in Silent Siren, they focus or they give a lot more attention to the low ends of the musical spectrum, the bass and the drums. So they had a far more pronounced sound from there than Poppin Party did. I think it's more of a sound mix preference than just a master volume issue, but anyways, they do showcase their bass and drums a lot more, and I enjoy that as well. And also something of note to me that I found kind of funny was, compared to Poppin Party, who basically started out without a hitch when it came time for them to perform, SaiSai actually sang a little bit out of sync at the very beginning for Fujiyama Disco. Like, when I mean out of sync, I mean some people were rushing, some people were dragging and whatnot. The vocals were not on the same page as the drums, at least for the first half of the song. So, you know, it just goes to show that even these professionals, since this is their first time on a dome stage, they might be experiencing some issues as well. Although personally, I feel like it might be just it's probably because of the delay issue, the sound delay issue, and they later on did get this fixed, but again, it was just kind of funny for me that they were actually the ones who experienced these kinds of issues. But no worry, I mean, they're still professionals, and it really showed later on in some other parts, which I will get to. So after Fujiyama Disco, great opener, they followed up with Hachigatsu no Yoru. Again, this is the song. This is the song in contrast or in parallel with Poppin Party's Hachigatsu no If, and that is why they both decided to play these songs, I guess. Although in Silent Siren's case, I would kind of argue that Hachigatsu no Yoru might be one of their most recognizable and most popular songs. So this is also another song that I knew of before this actual concert. They also, during this song, started with the moving stage. They moved on the moving stage, they rose up and then rode out to the middle and eventually to the far end of the stadium. Now, what actually stood out to me during this song is the bass player Ainyan. And she's just, she actually Silent Siren have a similar setup to Poppin Party in where they position their different players. So again, on Poppin Party, it was Remy closer to my side. In this case, it was the SaiSai bass player Ainyan close to my side, and she did pass right close by to me as well because of the rolling stage. And what really struck out to me was how natural she looked. Not only playing the bass, but also she was moving around the stage, interacting or smiling or whatnot with all different areas of the stage. In 360 degrees from where she was standing. She sometimes went more to the forward of stage, more to the back, more to the sides and whatnot. And just generally had a more of a interacting feel with the crowd, right? So Remy, don't get me wrong, Remy also did this to a certain extent, but for the most part, Remy was more focused on her own playing, while in this case, Ainyan made a concentrated effort to do interactions along with playing. And well, I guess even though I say concentrated effort, I feel like what's maybe even more fitting a description would be the effortlessness that she showed while doing these at the same time. So you can really get the sense of how they are pros just from this kind of behavior, right? So that was my biggest takeaway from this song, actually. So then they follow it up with Guru Guru Wonderland, What Show Is It, and Bisan, which is sort of short for Beach Sandals. And I'm looping these together because they kind of show us the professionalism of Silent Siren together, which I'll explain in a little bit. So first of all is Guru Guru Wonderland, right? So this song is a towel swinging and throwing song. If you're a Poppin Party fan, then you probably know Natsuno Don, you have to wear the towels along. It's that kind of song, right? What show is it? It actually is a chanting song. You chant Washoi, because it sounds similar to What Show. And Washoi is sort of like a it's a thing that you shout out when you're participating in festival events, like Washoi, Washoi. So there's that part. And then Bisan is a, I guess, O song, if you will. So there's this part where you chant O along with the members. And like I said, these songs I grouped together because they really showcase the experience that Silent Siren have in firing up a crowd, especially under what we can kind of say hostile conditions, right? Because, I forgot to mention this, but during this entire concert, I would say probably 90% of the people attending were Bang Dreamers or PoPiPa fans, and only 10% or so were pure Silent Siren fans. That's just how it was, based on my observations, based on walking around, looking at different people. And actually, Silent Siren also did a survey themselves, asking how many people came to how many of them had went to a Silent Siren concert before. And judging, again, eyeball check, but I would say probably less than 10% of people are pure Silent Siren fans. But even so, Silent Siren managed to find a way to get the crowd interacted and, moving along and having fun along with them, right? Now, granted, you could say that Bang Dreamers and PoPiPa fans in particular are probably quite accommodating towards other girl bands as well. So it's not entirely a hostile situation. Like, it's not, sort of like rock festivals where some would only want to hear those really hardcore bands or whatnot, or there would be a band elitist or a music elitist, if you will. So it's not really that kind of situation, but at the same time, I feel like they do exhibit the kind of professionalism and aura in order to carry themselves in this kind of environment where most people are sort of apathetic towards your music, right? So say for instance, myself, right? I would even though I do like some of their songs, I wouldn't really call myself a Silent Siren fan. And these 3 songs, Guru Guru Wonderland, What Show Is It, Bisan, I've never heard before. And honestly, if I'm, to be completely frank here, even after listening to these songs, I still don't really like them that much, right? From a music perspective, I don't really like these songs that much. However, even with that said, I was still able to follow along and have fun myself as well, because Silent Siren actually made it a particular point of theirs to always, before the start of the song, interact with the crowd, teach them the calls and responses, teach them how to have fun alongside them. So, even though you're not a fan of theirs or whatnot, you can still participate along and have fun in your own way, right? Since, you're already there anyways, you might as well have fun while you're at it, is what I'm trying to say. So even though I didn't really like these 3 songs, I could also go whoa or washoi along with it. I could, twirl my pen lights around along with them. And so it made for a nice experience, right? And this is definitely something I feel like Poppin Party needs to try and get into as part of their skill set as well, especially now. By the time that I'm recording this, it's actually been announced that Poppin Party are going to be attending Rock in Japan, a very prominent rock festival, summer rock festival in Japan, where they are going to be faced with lots of people who are completely apathetic to their music and maybe even downright hostile. So this is definitely something that they could learn a lot from, in how to try to get the crowd fired up and going, even if they aren't your fans, is what I'm trying to say. So I definitely applaud Silent Siren on this part. And then another genius move, I feel, would be putting No Girl No Cry, the Silent Siren version, right after these 3 songs, right? Because these 3 songs, like I said, they're participation songs, but then you would get fatigued. So even if you play along or whatnot, after these 3 songs, you might think, okay, that's enough is enough, right? But they decide to put No Girl No Cry here, and No Girl No Cry is also a PoPiPa song as well, right? So of course, with all these PoPiPa fans down there, they would know the calls to this song, and so it would actually get them fired up again, even though they might be a little bit fatigued or tired from all the different interactions from the previous 3 songs. So, that's, I feel like that this entire, not just the fact that how they handled the crowd, but also this particular ordering of the set list really speaks volumes to their experience. And how they got these chops by playing at lots of different live houses, at different music festivals, etc., etc. And that is something that PoPiPa is actually lacking. And speaking of No Girl No Cry, right? I think it was this song, actually, during the solo parts, that Sue actually impressed me with her guitar playing as well. So I actually have seen her guitar before. By all means, she's a guitar vocalist, right? So sort of like Aimee, a lot of the time she's just doing basic power chords, basic rhythm chords. But, she actually, after this performance, I did gain more respect for her as a guitarist as well. So good on her for that. And so then on, we have an MC segment, right? A talk segment by Silent Siren. Now, to be honest, I kind of forgot if this was before or after No Girl No Cry, but so just bear with me. But basically, the entire topic of the MC was how they, their various interactions with Poppin Party as well, right? So, in parallel to what Poppin Party also said about them, they returned the favor as well. And also, they used this as a segue into talking about Bandori, Bang Dream as well, and how they relate to the franchise themselves. Because, Bang Dream is talking about girl bands, right? And more specifically, girl bands that started in high school, if you will. And that sort of parallels with Silent Siren as well. I believe most of the members were all in girl bands when they were in high school as well, although they didn't really form this, Silent Siren until after they graduated. And indeed, a lot of the famous, or okay, maybe not a lot of the famous, but a lot of girl bands that are currently professionally playing in Japan also started out as, high school girl bands as well. So you can easily see that, Bang Dream, although of course it's fiction, right? So maybe a lot of the events are not as dramatic or as absurd as the game or anime makes it out to be, but at the same time, it does provide a certain sense of nostalgia for these actual real life girl band members, right? And so they basically ended with a general plea to ask everybody to continue to support both Poppin Party and Silent Siren, as well as all the other various girl bands out there as well. So anyways, after that MC segment, or maybe before No Girl No Cry. Anyways, the 7th song that they played was Tenkai Ippin no Theme. This is also another fun song. It's actually a theme song for a ramen chain in Japan, Tenkai Ippin. I actually went there to eat a few days later with some Silent Siren fans. It was okay, alright? It was okay. But the song for this was pretty catchy as well, and it's also one of the songs that I actually quite like, compared with the 3 songs before that they played. The 8th song, Joshiko Senso, or Girl High School War, something like that, is also another song that I originally knew. So hey, it's great that they play a lot of these songs that I actually already knew. And I do like this song as well, especially the arrangement to it. It's very nice to listen to. It's very instrumentally driven, which is something that I do enjoy. So if you guys have a chance, maybe check this one out as well. And then they followed this up with ALC Monster. Now, ALC Monster is one of their newer songs, actually, from their new album. I actually made an effort to listen to their new album before attending this No Girl No Cry concert, because I wanted to see, what their current sound is like, as well as maybe be prepared to follow along with any songs that they do perform during this performance. Now, ALC Monster is one of the new songs within their new album, and quite frankly, it's probably right now my favorite Silent Siren song. It's not quite their original sound. It's very, how should I describe it? It's more heavy in a sense. Not overtly so, but it's definitely something that's a bit more outside their normal sound. But I really do like it, especially the drum portion for this. And so I was glad that they were able to sing this song as well. And it also made nice sense to go from Joshiko Senso to ALC Monster. These are both more instrumentally driven songs that are also a little bit more complex rather than the normal pop, summer pop, if you will, of Silent Siren sound. So good on them, and I'm glad that they played these 2 songs. And so for the final song of Silent Siren, they decided to play Koi no Esper. Now this is actually a skit song. It's catchy in its own right, but it's mostly used for skits, and the skit is basically Sue, the vocalist of Silent Siren, holding her hands up and going like stop, and then pretending she has Esper powers, special abilities, and so freezing time, if you will. Now the thing that actually really got me was, even though I'm sure that most people at the live didn't really know about this skit, they were all very cooperative. Once Sue raised her hands up and went like stop, everybody actually stopped and froze. So I felt like that part was really genius, and it really just goes to show how it's just a great crowd interaction, right? It's very fun to participate along. Now, of course, there were some people who didn't want to participate, and they were yelling and hollering and whatnot, but whatever, right? So after that, she played around with her other bandmates as well, joking around and whatnot, and then resuming time and then stopping time again, that kind of thing. But I think probably the most important part is that in one of the final stops that she did, they then decided to resume time by playing Tokimeki Experience. I think the actual setup for this was that they transformed themselves into PoPiPa, something like that. I'm not sure, but anyways, one of the skits was that after the resumed time, they decided to play the intro to Tokimeki Experience, and boy, that got the crowd roaring, if I might say so myself. Like I said, the previous two songs were favorites of mine, but they weren't really crowd interaction songs. It's basically just there to listen to them sing, listen to them play, right? This one, again, because of this crowd interaction, it really got the crowd back into it again, especially for some people who maybe don't really care about Silent Siren's other music. So, and especially using Tokimeki Experience, again, once they played the few intro parts, people started to, chant the call and response parts along as well. Now, sadly, it was only just the intro part, but it was actually a nice foreshadowing of things to come on day 2 as well. So that was overall a nice touch by Silent Siren. So after Silent Siren played their final song and left the stage, of course, we get into the encore chanting part, right? Although in this case, I'm not quite sure, maybe time was of a premium, or they felt they were going over limits for the time, but I feel like we literally chanted less than 10 seconds of encore, and then the lights dimmed again, and then they started to show the videos that would basically signal going into the encore segment. And the videos, there isn't really much to talk about. It's basically the members of both sides praising each other, Poppin Party praising SaiSai praising PoPiPa, so not really much to talk about there. And then once the video was over, both bands came out, said thanks for the encore, and then the encore kicked off, right? So that was a little bit awkward, to be honest, but whatever. I guess they were running out of time. And so, anyways, like I said, both bands, all 9 people, came out during the encore segment. First, they had a little talk, played around a little bit. PoPiPa were especially sort of enamored by Koi no Esper. They wanted to play around with that as well, and so they asked Sue to stop time again, and then they, basically played around a bit with that, using their own skits. So that was quite funny as well, and I mean, PoPiPa always like to do these kinds of fooling around stuff, right? So no surprises there, and they're cute, they're hilarious. Well, it is what it is, right? You guys can see once the Blu-ray drops. But anyways, after that, they decided to play a collaboration song, and that would be Cherry Bomb. So, PoPiPa actually covered this song within the Garupa game as well. So it was fitting that they decided to play this one together. So again, before they actually played it, Silent Siren again came out and taught people how to do the cherry bomb hand gestures and the call and responses. So it's basically like cherry bomb, and that's basically it, right? It's pretty simple, pretty easy, but they still made an effort to teach this, and they even taught the tempo that you should do it with. So again, that was nice as well, and again, another showcase of their professionalism in dealing with strange, hostile crowds, if you will, or apathetic crowds. And then I will say that, having all 9 on stage it seems like a nice concept, but realistically, I'm just thinking about the nightmares it must have been to coordinate all the sounds together. And indeed, I don't think it was the smoothest listening experience, if I'm honest, especially in terms of the 2 vocalists, Aimi and Sue. I feel like their voices were a bit off from each other. I'm not quite sure who was the one off key, but someone was, because it did kind of sound funky and weird. But it's still a fun song, and I guess, it is a kind of a fitting end to this entire concert, right? Now, sadly, this was the only encore song that they played, so after this it was again bye. Of course, there's still day 2, but they actually, even in day 2, they didn't play more than 1 encore song as well, so I was a little bit bummed out by that part. Alrighty, and so I guess to conclude day 1, let me give a little bit of my summary thoughts for this day so far, and how I perceived it up to this point in regards to the actual No Girl, No Cry concert. So, again, in terms of the actual venue, later on, some figures were out in regards to actual attendance. Honestly, when I participated in this for the first day, I felt like the seats were pretty much full, except for the very sides, which are pretty crappy seats anyways. So day one attendance by all means seemed to be pretty high. Of course, but again, most of it was filled by Bang Dreamers or Poppin Party fans. And like I said before, Silent Siren fans really constitute less than 10% of the people, just from eyeball test. In regards to the actual venue and the actual setup, I did like they had moving stages. The sound, of course, was pretty meh, but as I'm told, it's actually pretty par for the course. The sound technicians really need to get their act together. Like, sound acoustics are one thing, right? But some things as simple as opening people's mics or the sound levels and whatnot, there shouldn't have been any problems with that if you're an experienced sound team here, right? So they really dropped the ball on this one. Now, to me, it was actually day one was actually still acceptable. Like I said, maybe it's because I was more distracted by some other things and I wasn't listening that closely to the sound. But for the most part, I thought it was okay-ish, just barely. In terms of the actual performers on Poppin Party's side, like I said, they all seemed pretty carefree and very energetic, right? So, but it really didn't seem to me like they were stressed out or anything. They seemed relaxed, they seemed confident, even though this is, again, a pretty big endeavor for them, playing at a venue of this size. And I really felt like it was even more natural than the previous lives I saw them at, right? I don't know if this may be because they now have lots of these kinds of big venue experiences under their belt, so they're relatively unfazed here. And well, of course, if you want to say there's still stuff that they can do better, like I said, when I was praising Silent Siren so much for them rallying up the crowd here. In this case, I guess you could say Poppin Party really just viewed this as their home crowd, if you will, their home turf. So they're playing to their home team, if you will. But you still have to take into consideration that, even though 10% is just a tiny portion of the audience, that it's still people who don't really know you. So perhaps they could have done a better job of accommodating these foreign fans to them. Justified, and especially now that they're going to other venues as well, or other events, this is definitely something that they should try and be on top of. Beyond that, though, individually, again, not really much I can say. Aimee sounded great this live, or at least for this day. Well, actually for both days as well, but we're talking about day one right now. Probably even better than her 7th live, and maybe even the ones before, so flawless performance from her. Sai is Sai. Now, unfortunately, because I was on the other side of the stage, I didn't really get to see much of Sai. But, she's always solid in her own right. Although I did catch one big mistake that she made with the guitar. That I did catch. But beyond that, nothing much to say there as well. Remy, she's a badass. I've said this numerous times before, but again, it's just so funny actually seeing her in person, seeing how small she is, and then seeing how badass she is on the camera and whatnot. So that was great. Ayasa, like I said, I didn't really she's on the other side, so I didn't really get to do much. I didn't really get to see her much as well, but she's usually really at home and natural during the talk segments as well, making jokes and whatnot. So she's her. Now in Ayaka's case, I will say something though. So she didn't really let's see. So in all the times when Poppin Party were out on the moving stage and in the carts instead, she actually didn't use a full complete drum set. She played basically a watered down version of, so she could play drums standing up, if you will. So there's no bass drum, and there's only a snare and 1 or 2 cymbals and whatnot. So a very a very bare bones drum kit, if you will. I think you can't really even call it a drum kit. And there was instead a shadow drummer playing on her actual kit for the actual song. Now, then again, this is something that she's been doing anyways for the other songs. Again, it's not... Let me clarify a little bit here. Like, it's not like she doesn't know how to play the songs. I'm sure she does, especially all the songs that she does this for. She's already played before. She's always expressed the desire to be standing up and interacting with both her other bandmates and the crowd as well. So I guess I can't really fault her there for that. Now, however, there is one part which I will say is probably on her and only her, and that is during the encore part with Cherry Bomb. So even though during Cherry Bomb she was playing on stage, she also played a more watered down version of the drums as well, and not a complete drum kit. Now, I don't know, judging from that setting, I'm going to guess and say it's probably because she did not have time to learn Cherry Bomb. It's kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. She's actually really, really busy, and if you look at her schedule for these past few months, it's packed as well. In fact, it's considering her status, it's going to be packed all the way throughout the year. There's just no helping it. But I really do kind of worry on whether or not she's actually devoting enough time to drumming. By all means, this is still something that she loves to do, but there's only so much hours in a day, right? So that is Poppin Party's part. Silent Siren, I really can't say much. Again, I've pretty much praised them already for their professionalism and whatnot. And of course, they all look beautiful. They're funny as well. Sue, in particular, has a personality quite similar to Aimi, I guess you could say. So they really hit it off with each other. But yeah, I think there's lots of things that Poppin Party can learn from Silent Siren, and I do hope that they take the time and actually learn from them. So that pretty much concludes my thoughts for day 1, and so I guess stay tuned, guys, for day 2 as well as the other content as well. So if you have any questions in regards to day 1, do leave them down below, and I will try to answer them to the best of my abilities. So until next time, this is Mavry. Bye bye.